All right, let's call this meeting to order. If everyone would please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I make a motion to approve the agenda as published.
I second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
Thank you.
We're going to move right on to public comment, and I believe there's only one, and it is Geraldine Meyer from the high school. Sam. Hello, Mrs. Meyer.
Hello, how are you guys tonight?
Good. How are you?
Good.
I just wanted to share some awesome news about our community. And I'm going to burst poor Phil Kemick's bubble too, but Sandpoint High School and Clark are doing their scholarship nights tonight. And because of COVID, we've both chosen to just do kind of like a streaming so that groups are not coming in. But I really felt it was important for the board to know that our community, for Sandpoint High School alone, has supported $206,000 to our seniors going on. Isn't that incredible?
That's awesome. Yep.
And Clark has been supported $55,000, and I can't remember the change amount. But is that just not the most awesome thing? So I just wanted to tell you as a board, again, the ability to be face-to-face, what you've been able to help us move forward. Our students are moving on and going, and it's for college, it's for tech schools, it's for, one student got one to become a horseshoer. I mean, it's just awesome. So we just wanted to share that. Phil is obviously at Clark with his group tonight, and I'm leaving for the high school now, but we just wanted to let you all know that. So.
Thank you. Thank you. On that upbeat note, we move right into finance with our Chief Finance Officer, Lisa Halls.
Very difficult to follow, Joe.
I know, and you're going to give us money, right? Money numbers.
If you could just pass these around one. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, great.
Thanks, Gary.
Thank you, Gary.
Okay. Lucky I brought my glasses.
So it's been a month since I've been before you, and I wanted to update you on two different things. The first is that the state of Idaho has accepted the USDA's extension of what we call the summer meals program for the full school year 21 through June 30th of 22. And that translates, and we as a school district are electing that program next school year, and that means free breakfast and free lunch for all students without income verification. We also will be offering the summer meals program, I believe at 2 sites, at Kootenai and Farman over the summer. And that is just lunch, and then breakfast will be included in that bag for the next morning. What it has allowed for this fiscal year that's ending on June 30th and into next fiscal year is for our child nutrition program to operate in the absence of a deficit. We generally transfer about $275,000 out of our general fund into our child nutrition fund just to balance. And that's because the reimbursement rates for the breakfast and the lunch under the summer meals program is considerably higher than it is under the program that we've operated our normal school year. And then I just want to spend the rest of the time, and it will be brief, on an update of what's happened since I think I was here April 26th in our legislative session, and how that impacts further the structuring of our next fiscal year 22's budget. So before you, stapled pieces of paper, I have the capital note, and there's a section there that for the first time, the ISBA, the Idaho School Boards Association, is going to be holding a legislative kind of post update on the session that is in absence right now. And it's tomorrow at noon Pacific Standard Time, and this shows you the link. And
Great.
I really embrace that the ISBA is taking this tact. Something new for them.
Yeah.
And then this really does beg the question. Someone in the audience said, "So is the legislature adjourned?" And the Attorney General says, "No, the legislature is not adjourned." Although the Senate did declare sine die, but the House voted to recess, subject to the call of the Speaker, and the Attorney General's opinion is such that because the House did not concur with the Senate's sine die, that basically the Senate's move to sine die is moot. And this is particularly important for school districts on a couple of levels. The first is we have a temporary rule from last winter from the state board that says until sine die, school districts will be paid on enrollment versus average daily attendance, and show our last payment for fiscal year 21, which ends June 30th, but the last payment is calculated and distributed to districts on July 15th, so 15 days after the fiscal year ends, will be calculated. They look at normally the best 28 weeks of average daily attendance to calculate about 25% of our appropriation, and instead, unless sine die is declared, that calculation will be based on enrollment, which will just boost our unit count a little bit. It also is important because if we enter into fiscal year 22 being paced on enrollment, and I'll go into this later, the unit count that the fiscal year state appropriation for K-12 will probably also be too low. And I'll elaborate on that. Other things that have happened since the end of April, we now do have the state legislature giving full spending authority for ESSER 2 money, which was passed in December of 2020, and ESSER 3 money, which was passed in March of 2021 by July 1st. But it doesn't mean that they are releasing the full dollar amounts. It looks like they are releasing them in 50% chunks. Other things that have happened, House Bill 380 passed. This is the most sweeping piece of tax legislation in Idaho's history. It affects the corporate and the income tax. The fiscal estimate says that it will cost between $383 to $398 million next fiscal year, and then on a permanent basis between $163 to $171 million ongoing. And it makes 3 significant changes to Idaho's tax system. It reduces the number of tax brackets from 7 to 5. It reduces the individual income tax rates, and it reduces corporate income tax rates, and it provides a 9% tax rebate or $50 per taxpayer independent, whichever is greater for next tax year. And of course, income tax is the state's single largest revenue source, and whenever you are drastically reducing that as the state's largest agency budget, it's something we will keep our pulse on. It's also important because House Bill 380, there was a fair amount of discussion on if it would jeopardize the state's ability to receive the $1.9 trillion ARPA funds on the federal level, because it specifically prohibits tax cuts. And as of May 10th, the federal treasury has posted more guidance. There are 3 ways that you would be allowed to issue tax reductions at the state level and still be able to fully receive the ARPA funds. And so far, the determination is that Idaho fits one of those 3 parameters and that Idaho's ARPA funds are not in jeopardy. And then I'd like to spend the last portion of the time on the second 2 pieces of paper that I've handed out to you. The last time we met, the Joint Finance Appropriation Committee that morning had approved the fiscal year 21 K-12 appropriation as well as the fiscal year 22 appropriation. And what happens is that the bills and the motions are before the Joint Finance Appropriation Committee, and we actually, we can listen in, but we don't actually get the bills to review them until a day or days later. And something very significant has happened. Last time I told you, well, JFAC for fiscal year 22, next fiscal year, basically there was $1 million variance between what was originally March 12th going to be potentially the appropriation. And so I'd like to read the language, and you can see that the bill sponsors are at the top, including our Senator Woodward, who sits on the Joint Finance Appropriation Committee. And basically it says that it talks about what's called PSIF, the Public Education Stabilization Fund. This was set up now many years ago, and it had the functionality of it is if there is a variance in the K-12's agency budget, if it's a negative variance, you dip into the PSIF fund in order to balance the budget. So what's significant is what's underlined for the period July 1st, 2021 through June 30th of 2023, no monies from the Public Education Stabilization Fund shall be withdrawn for any purpose. I'll skip over this part. For encumbered obligations and uncovered obligations associated with state funds appropriated for fiscal year 22. The State Department of Education shall prorate any negative variance by a formula prescribed by the Department of Education. So the formula would be, they would look at the unit counts for all of the K-12 districts and then proportionate to your unit count, whatever a negative variance, they would reduce it from your final July 15th payment in 2022. And the reason why the period spans through June 30th of 2023 is there are always small revisions from the prior year that occur in the ensuing fiscal year. The history behind this is for at least the last 5 years, there has been a negative variance in the K-12 appropriation to the tune of about an average of $33 million a year. And before PSIF existed, just like with other agency budgets, if there was a negative variance, you would go back in the next legislative session and ask for a supplemental appropriation. Kind of, you maybe best know about that if there's a really big forest fire season. Oh, we need, the budget was insufficient. That kind of gets a lot of attention in the press. Not so much for K-12. And right now, the PSIF fund has, I believe, $98 million, about 5%. Remember, that was also the number of the 5% holdback for this fiscal year. And so now this would be saying, like the provision that we've talked about, protection, that districts would be self-funding any negative variance for the fiscal 22 appropriation. So if the negative variance clicked through to fiscal year 22 for what's been happening, of course we don't know for this fiscal year, for us that would be about $400,000. So that's a very significant portion of our state appropriation. It's about 1.7% of what we expect next year. So I've shared with you that with the fiscal year 22 appropriation, we thought we would receive an increase of $326,000. And now I'm telling you that, potentially it could be completely offset by this self-funding component of PSHIF. So I did reach out to Senator Woodward last Friday to ask what the origin of this addition to this bill, because it had not been verbalized, antecedent to or publicly sort of I guess I'm going to say broadcast, and we in this district follow the legislature very closely, and Senator Woodward described to me on the phone last Friday that JFAC has different kind of like subcommittees, and I believe there's probably an education subcommittee, and he sits on that, and they meet early in the morning and at night, and I believe the day before this bill was introduced, Representative Horman made the suggestion that this provision be included, but it should go through June 30th of 22, 23, 24, 3 years. And her rationale is that is the length of the ARPA funds, and that school districts can use their ARPA funds to make up if there's a negative variance. And then Senator Woodward said, that's too long. I recommend 1 year, and you can see that that's what's in legislation.
It looks like 2 years.
Well, no, it's only for a negative variance for fiscal year 22.
22.
Right,
Yes.
right, because there are adjustments
Yes.
that happen after any fiscal year is closed.
Okay.
And then Senator Woodward also said that he was impression that that districts would be, that Representative Foreman said, well, districts are going to be made whole. And I said, so do you mean that you would be using state ARPA funds, not each district's individual ARPA funds? And he said he would have to reach back out to Representative Horman, and I have not heard back from Senator Woodward. So now I want to just sort of accent this a bit and turn to this big piece of paper. So the three portions of the K-12 appropriation that are basically the guts of why we've experienced these negative variances are things I've circled: the transportation line item, the advanced opportunities line item, and the support unit line item. And so if you look at the far column on the right, it's looking at the fiscal year 22 appropriation compared to the fiscal year 21 appropriation. And you can see that transportation has a 7.7 increase, advanced opportunities a 48% increase, and the unit count a fourth of 1%. So really the biggest variance has been the transportation and the unit count. So you can make the argument, well, maybe there won't be a negative variance for advanced opportunities, but there probably will be some negative variance for transportation, and particularly for unit count, where it's been increased by a fourth of 1%. Which then circles back to, well, if there's no sine die, and we are being paid on enrollment next year, just sort of that mere factor alone bolsters everybody's unit count by around 4 or 5%, which then creates a different problem, which we've talked about, which is called protection, which is self-funded. And just because I work closely with the three largest districts in the state, Nampa, Boise, and West Ada, and they're projecting, significant drops in the unit count for next year, which would mean that all the other districts are self-funding this. So between potential piece of variance, and, you know, we don't know what's going to happen with average daily attendance or enrollment. I've decided that, you know, we're going to sort of budget at least $200,000 less, which is half, potentially a maximum probably piece of variance, and that you know, any bill can be amended, and hopefully we in unison and collectively can educate our policymakers that you know, and I can speak for our district. When we received our ARPA amount, we mapped out how we're spending it through September 30th of 2024, and now this is, you know, a large amount of money, and if it were to be a precursor for what might continue under the policy plank that districts could use their ARPA funds, that would be significant. You know, that would be maybe $1.2 million. I also would say that, of course, the State Department of Education is responsible for coming up with what they think is a structurally balanced budget, and that there is certainly responsibility and onus there to present, you know, a budget that doesn't have a significant variance. Those conclude my remarks. Are there any questions?
So what I gathered out of this is that what we're gonna see in the budget that you present to us is that we'll tighten it up by about 200,000 to offset what is probably gonna be a potentially $400,000.
Yeah, I definitely think that the
Variance.
transportation and the unit count variance is going to be significant. And,
Yeah.
that we need to budget that up front.
And plan for it.
Yeah.
So when we hear from you in the second meeting in June on budget.
You'll actually see a drop in state appropriation compared to this year, because instead of having a $300,000 increase, we're going to have about a $100,000 decrease as a
Right,
result of it.
right. But some of these things will be, I mean, it'll be understood by then.
Right. But for districts, I mean, they're gonna have to wait until July 15th, 2022, after
To really know the full impact.
Right, and of course, the State Department of Education by February of 2022 will have a better picture, but
Okay.
it makes the job more difficult.
Okay. Yeah. There are other questions?
Question. I want to talk about the ADA versus enrollment funding formulas. Okay, so to back up, the state's been on ADA for many years. During COVID last fall, the State Board of Education imposed a enrollment-based formula. But it was only applied to the current school year unless the legislature extended it, which they did not do. So with the legislature not acting, the state is scheduled to revert to the ADA formula. But that doesn't go into effect until the legislature adjourns. And the legislature has not officially adjourned.
Correct.
So our entire school year this year, we're being funded on enrollment. And if the legislature fails to adjourn officially, you know, by the time the next school year begins, will we continue to be funded based on enrollment?
That is the understanding currently, yes.
The special rule.
But the
Based on-
special rule said for, yeah, I'd have to look at the
Until
wording.
adjourned.
It just said,
Adjourned.
Yeah.
The language is-
it doesn't say
So of
for a
course the
year
state
until
board
adjourned, it says,
could amend their temporary rule.
Right.
yeah,
You know, the variables are,
yeah.
there are cadre of variables.
So, I mean, the legislature, the Senate has adjourned, but the legislature has not adjourned.
Right, well, the Attorney General says that the Senate's move to adjourn is moot because the House is in recess.
I heard another interpretation that if the House calls itself back into session, there's nothing they can do because without the Senate, you know, they have no authority.
They're just not adjourning.
So
That's
I'll just
their-
bring it back full circle to us, is that, you know, trying to project is very difficult. And for the first time, when you think you have like sort of the authority, well, I don't know, is that,
And
is that
the
actually?
reason the legislature failed to adjourn, I think, was based on two primary things. Number one, the governor's authority, his executive authority for emergencies. They're afraid the governor may impose, another restriction which the legislature does not support. And the other thing is the ESSER money. The legislature wants to participate in how all these ESSER funds that are coming from the federal government are proportioned.
Well, I look forward to a further update, and Superintendent has a question.
Lisa, if
Yeah.
you could just remind the board also that there had been a committee put together for quite a few years studying moving to enrollment anyway.
Yes.
Do you have a little more history on that?
Right, so under Governor Otter, for a period of 3.5 years, there was a large bipartisan committee that looked at the funding formula, all the components of the funding formula. And some of the things they took immediately off the table, most poignantly facilities, or looking at how property taxes are levied relative to school districts. And then another big concentration was, almost every other state in the nation is funds on a formula based on enrollment versus average daily attendance. And while there was not consensus on a lot of things, one of them from the committee and the recommendation was for Idaho to move to an enrollment-based FTE student funding. And that was introduced in the legislative session 2020. That did not, they said, they didn't have enough data, so we went through a year of reporting ADA and enrollment, and it was an expectation that pre-COVID that that would probably be a discussion for this legislative session, and basically we had no traction whatsoever.
So it's possible that they were moving that direction anyways, your point.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Governor Otter, yes, he had that committee,
Yeah.
and they came up with a 5-year plan. They had a 5-year plan.
Yes.
And Governor Otter very diligently adhered to their plan. And the first 4 years of the 5-year plan were during his administration. The last year of the 5-year plan came during Governor Little's first year. And he pretty much followed the plan too. But since the plan has now expired, there seems to be less commitment to education in the state.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
And at this happy time, we'll move on to school presentation with Principal Jackie Johnson with Southside Elementary. Hello?
It sits there nicely, doesn't it? Okay. This is my last.
I know.
So, here we go.
Yeah.
And we started the year with three foci.
Yes.
Number one was relationships. Number two, we understood that ELA may not suffer as bad because kids were reading at home. But math is where we needed to focus. Math depends on that spiraling, continuous concept building, and they missed it. They missed a quarter. And then our third focus was, what will we do with STEAM when we're in yellow? So, okay, fast forward, now I'm in this point, and I said to the teachers, why don't you put some slide pictures together and your data celebration, and I'll call that my board report.
I like it.
Only took me 14 years to come up with that, but then I couldn't leave well enough alone. But what I did notice was all the teachers' slides were project-based learning, and that's where the next step for STEAM is, at Southside. And a project-based learning, you take a problem, a current problem, you do some research, then you build, you write, you read, you math around that project. And I look back and all the teachers celebrated a project-based learning. So here we go. Mrs. Rackham, she, kindergarten, not in the box, They built things with little box scissors and box bolts in the fall. And in the spring, they built benches and painted them. So her data high point was IRI was in the red 20 to 40 off and on all year, and she finished with only 9% in the red. Red is not where you want to be. So
Right.
that was her data point.
That's good.
First grade, Mrs. Kristinek, she's our outdoor classroom person and our Southside garden person. Students, their project-based learning wrote reports on native animals and plants, and they planted seeds and celebrated by giving those away at Mother's Day.
Nice.
And her data point celebration was 100% of her students met or exceeded their growth goal in math. 50% is the national average. She pulled off 100%.
Good for them.
Second grade is the bounciest group I've seen in years. But second grade, gosh, they did the cutest little coding keychains, and that then they created this little poem to go with it, and those went home as Christmas gifts for parents.
Huh.
Isn't that cool?
Mm-hmm.
Her data highlight is the results aren't in. She's just starting the last round of maps. With bouncies, we're doing much smaller groups to ensure better results. Mrs. Evans, her class built a sustainable structure to withstand extreme weather. And her data celebration is 78% of her students met or exceeded the MAP growth goal. Mrs. Lukens is currently this is Mrs. Ribeiro, our music teacher, but this is Mrs. Lukens' class, and they are putting on a play called Here We Have Idaho. And that is this Thursday. If you'd like more information, I can get you the times. And what a great way to learn a chunk of Idaho through singing and presenting, right? And 90% of her students showed the growth that she was hoping in her goal with the Ready Gen pre and post reading. Mrs. Hunt, their project-based learning was ecosystems. And they researched first, and then they illustrated ecosystems and biomes, the habitat in which their organism lives, and then they drew an example of their food web. And then after that, they added natural, shakers for music class, and terrariums. So 75% of fifth grade students met their math goal. Now sixth grade, the problem they started with was that Mars landing. And so they created drones out of paper cups and magnets and weights, and then used a string to land their rover on that target. So there was competition around it. They learned a lot about friction force, and it was awesome. Sixth grade is celebrating 78% of their students pre-post math baseline met their goal.
What did you say? 78%.
So then in our think tank is where students get extra help or interventions, and we do a lot of pull in and push out with title. PE, this was a fun activity. The students built highways, car washes, and parking lots with those little, what are those called?
Yeah.
Those things.
Those
I
things.
remember them.
Yeah, and then they had a policeman out there enforcing the right traffic laws. So
that is
was a hit.
hilarious.
In music, right here we have the kids practicing for kindergarten promotion. Miss Ribeiro includes history, composers. It's an awesome music program at Southside. In second grade, showing the direction of the melody. Yep. And then in art, she started the year, Mrs. Benno, with Every Cloud Has a Silver Lining, painting on canvas. And they ended the project splatter painting book bags to take their books and their artwork home. In our library, we have been doing a lot of project-based learnings, and so lessons, and so we put together a wax museum. We used to have it face-to-face. This year we couldn't, so we did pumpkins. So the students decorated their pumpkin as their favorite book character. And so we displayed those in tables up and down the hall, and then we had a virtual museum for the parents. And then we did that with the balloons over Broadway, and then with the Bug Out for Reading project. The students had a literacy and science project to do with their parents. They took home all these elements to build a bug. They came back and either wrote a story, a presentation, a display, and then all these bugs, and oh my gosh, they were creative. So that was another family event. Then in our STEAM Smart Lab, can't wash it all down every class, and so we limit it to 5th grade on one day and 6th grade on the other. Then as our yellow became a little more green zone-ish, we started adding 3rd and 4th grades, but they're doing circuitry, robots, animation, strength, structure, 3D printing. It is so awesome. Oh, I was gonna move this to the end, but this was one of our highlights just recently. We had Swamp Rock Fiddle Camp. And this year I joined in to learn. And so I got to play along sometimes. And TJ joined me with the 2nd grade, and Andra and Tom got to see the folklore and some of the presentations. Awesome event. Okay, so then I said, well, academics are starting to firm up. Maybe I can get some results. These aren't the whole results, but they're the latest results. Fall to winter in MAP, 3rd through 6th does a mid-year check-in. And so the diamond is where the averages, and the blue is where the Southside teachers landed.
So the state averages or district averages?
National average.
National average.
Yeah, on basic skills. Yep. IRI, we take that test every month, and we started in September. That's what we looked like, grade by grade. The goal is to have more green and less red. And see in May,
Yeah,
mission
that looks
accomplished.
really good.
Kindergarten is finishing up with their MAP assessments, and this is my favorite graph. What does it mean? If everybody's above the line, that means they're moving, they're growing. And if everybody's to the right of that center line, that means they're high achieving. So to get that many students in that quadrant is awesome. And this measures as another measure of both math and reading. And in this, the X is the math and the block is the reading, or vice versa. So kindergarten, hats off. And then look at 2nd grade.
Yeah, that's great.
You're gonna have to build another quadrant. 2nd grade doesn't have one because they're not finished yet. 3rd through 6th, this is where we are with the ISAT. In math, you can see I only have 40 students listed, whereas in ELA I have 65. So the results are not finalized for the math, but for the ELA they are. So then I wrote over to the left and I said, okay, grade by grade, Southside District, State Department. Bottom line, when you average it all together, Southside's at 65%, the district 59, and the state 51. So that's a bright spot. Now when math comes in, I'm glad we got this before the math results were there, because math has got a bigger red and orange already, so we've still got some growth to do in math. Student surveys. The State Department has the kids do surveys each year, and it measures their attachment to school learning, behaviorally, cognitively, and emotionally. The first three are grades 3, 4, and 5, and then the second three is grade 6. They qualify in elementary and middle school. So the goal is to have dark green, yay, and no gold, yay. So what we know is our sixth graders are starting to emotionally perhaps disengage from learning, but overall that is rock solid.
Are you
Kids
calling the
are
red
engaged.
gold?
Yes, it's
Oh.
gold on mine, red
Oh,
up
I
here.
see. Okay,
Yeah.
red to
Yeah.
have no red, and yeah, by the time
Yeah.
the sixth graders are.
Yeah. So that was a huge celebration.
Oh, wow.
So then I say, oh gosh, I'm standing in this moment, let's look back, right? Yeah. And I say, oh, I'm so proud of our STEAM Smart Lab. You know, the region, the families, the community, they all chipped in. This was almost $90,000 for our little school. And we're the first and the only school in the state of Idaho to have a Smart Lab. So we put STEAM on the map. What else? We're STEM certified. That was a lot of work, a lot of rigor, and we did it. We did it. We have to update every year, and then every 3 years, we go through the whole process again. So it is a celebration for sure. Also, cultivating leaders to grow young readers. That was a reading initiative to keep kids from special education. And so K1 and 2, we have a pre-reset observation, and we do 16 coachings with feedback and then a post. And so it really does take that kind of intervention, intense effort to move that needle on those foundational skills for kids. Awesome project. I'm also very, very proud of our academic success overall. You know, that's a lot to celebrate. You know, lifelong learners is what we're all about, and I'd like to celebrate that as well. And the Southside School road sign, I'd like to celebrate that. Doggone it, that took me 2 years to get that sign out there. And parents traveling north were having cars bear down on them. They would come to the counter, I was almost killed, and so that's huge. And if that doesn't fix the problem once we open the door to parents' input again, they promised me an exit ramp or a side ramp, so.
Wow.
And it all couldn't have been possible without the Southside staff. Yeah, truly the best kept secret in the Panhandle.
That's great.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
11 student days, and it's a done deal.
I know. Thank you for all your years of work in the district.
Well,
Yeah.
You're
And
welcome.
we'll have a chance for questions, and is there any
Oh, questions?
things
I
you
just,
wanted to say?
I just want to say thank you to
Yeah.
Jackie, and for your dedication and your service and your leadership out at Southside.
Yeah,
And
You're more than welcome, yeah.
brought it
You know.
along a long
Yeah.
way.
I'd
Yeah.
also like to say that,
Yes.
you know, I've had a chance to work with Jackie as her representative, and
Yeah.
what she does for her school, I think is unparalleled in this district. It's just
Yeah.
incredible, the passion you have for your kids and your school.
Well, and Gary, you brought us the wetlands, another project-based learning.
Yeah, yeah.
But I just have a couple questions. Okay, you have some facilities and some programs at your school that we're not able to offer, you know, across the district, and I'd like for you to comment on them. You know, the first one you covered pretty thoroughly, your Smart Lab. The second one I'd like to ask you about is the effect of your all-day kindergarten program. And the third one, your after-school, your 20th century
Oh, yes.
learning after-school program. So could you talk a little bit about those and what it means to your students and their families.
All day kindergarten is, I think, paramount. It's the first place to get that intervention in, for sure. And that's all I can say about that. I'm just really grateful that that's become a district priority.
Do all your students participate? Do you have one?
Yes.
Yeah.
All
That's
the
great.
students do. Occasionally, we'll get a parent who says, oh, it's too long for my child. And so we let them check them out early. You know, we stack the deck so that they get the reading and math portion. And all kindergarten students are exhausted in September, but by the end of October, they're full-blown students. And so, yeah.
Cool.
The after-school program, Gary, I'm glad you brought that up. I'm gonna count back on my fingers. 4 years ago, we had a parent pay after-school program, and we had distinguished funds that the teachers pitched in to offset the cost. And we had about 5 or 6 students as all, you know, some coming and going, but it wasn't a huge count success. But here's what happens. If you don't have an after-school program at Southside and the parent works in Coeur d'Alene, they take the kids with them and enroll them there.
Yeah, that's
And then they take them to town and enroll them there. And as soon as they make that decision in kindergarten, we don't get them back. So that after-school program has really kept families in our school. And then once they're introduced, they're won over, right?
That's great.
But it supports literacy and it supports working families. So we did that for 2 years and then 1 year and limped along. And I think even Lisa had to pitch in some end at the end. We kind of went over budget just a tad. But then the next year, Rotary really supported us. And so Rotary was our year 2. And then year 3 and 4 was a century, the 21st century.
Yeah.
Andra, I just kept nipping at her heels and she said, okay, your free and reduced is low enough, we'll let you slide in. And let me tell you, they wanted 50% and we were 50.06 or something. So but it's a 3-year grant, so we've got to keep our eye on that coming up because we want to keep that for Southside for sure.
That's great.
Yeah.
Good, thank you for that.
Anything else? Should I get all 3 of them?
Yes?
Well, your smart lab, you talked about that a lot.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah.
And superintendent?
So with that, Jackie, why don't you stay there, but TJ Clary, could you come up and join Jackie? TJ has been hired as the new principal at Southside Elementary.
Welcome.
And
Awesome fit.
it's been great to have Jackie there as a mentor. They've been working together and really seamless. But TJ, why don't you introduce yourself really quick to the board? And
yeah, my name is TJ Clary. I just want to start and just thank you so much for this transition period. It's been great. I didn't know I was going to gain a friend out of this transition.
Yeah.
But we've been working a couple days a week together on the phone, face to face. And I'm learning a lot. She's doing a great job as far as like mentoring me, like Superintendent Albertson said. And so I am getting more and more excited after seeing these slides. Now I'm like ready. Let's go. I'm ready to go to work. So anyway, I wanted to start out by just sharing that I'm actually one of 5 generations at Southside Elementary, which is a pretty unique situation. And I want to explain that. My grandpa, he actually drove school bus to Southside. My dad attended Southside. I attended Southside in 6th grade. And then my kids went to Southside Elementary, and I currently have a granddaughter in kindergarten at Southside. In fact, I saw her picture on the screen. So I'm pretty excited to be able to be part of something that big and just continue just being part of the Southside family. So
Great.
yeah, and so anyway, I don't know if you want me to go into detail more as far as my story getting here or not. I'd love to share it.
Sure.
Yeah.
So starting out 6th grade, Southside Elementary, then I moved on to Sandpoint Middle School, and then Sandpoint High School. I was into sports. I was captain of the football team, made varsity baseball my freshman year, and then unfortunately my parents, everything kind of turned upside down. My parents went through a divorce my freshman year, and I actually was not able to finish high school, and so I actually didn't graduate high school, and that kind of pinned me to my identity for the next several years. And I worked in the logging industry, construction, excavating, and then just there wasn't quite enough for me in that fulfillment in life, so I was able to just go and get my GED And that actually motivated several people in my family to get their GED as well. And then from that point, I decided, in fact, they gave me, when I got my GED, NIC gave me a pamphlet that said, here's, our program, and I kind of laughed at them, and 6 months later, I was enrolled full-time and working dad, and my wife and I just took the plunge and decided that I wanted to be a teacher so I could hopefully make a difference to, any student or adult or anybody out there that faces struggles. I just want to motivate people just to be better and to never give up. So anyway, I got my degree through NIC, and then Lewis Clark Pace. I got my teaching degree, and then taught for a couple years, motivated by Casey McLaughlin after that to get my master's degree so I could eventually become a principal, and here I am.
That's great.
And so I'm super excited to be able to serve our community, serve Southside, and just serve everybody around me. So thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. What a great story. And welcome. And goodbye. It's a kind of combo. It's kind of great you're both together here presenting together.
Yeah, it was fun. I had a parent situation I needed Tom's help on. And so I just forwarded that on to TJ and said, all right, what are you going to do with this one?
Let the good times roll.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you
So,
both. Nice to meet you.
TJ,
Yes.
I mean, when you look at the kids at Southside and you look at their names, I mean, are there a lot of families
Family
there
names,
that you're familiar with?
Yes, definitely. When we were out at Fiddle Camp the other day, I recognized a lot of students, and that's the best part about growing up around here and
Yeah.
just knowing everybody is you see the kids and you're like, wow, I went to school with somebody that looks just like you. And so I love this community. I just love being here.
That's
Yeah,
great.
that's one of the best parts of the job. So
Great.
cool.
Well, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Oh, yep. So,
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I guess I second that.
like it. All on you, Gary.
Gotta pull out my menu here, okay.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Nope.
There are 3 things in the consent agenda that are request a bid, which does not mean those are the bids. It's, we have to approve the request for bid, so that's what's in there. No more discussion, so all in favor? Aye. Motion passes.
Thank you.
So we have the second reading of policy and
Yes.
clerk.
Yes, so at the last board meeting, I did present the board policy 5415, other types of leave, and for your courtesy procedure, a 5403 sick leave bank. And at that time, there was a little discussion, but no edits of which I presented. So if there are no other questions, I did include a motion. Again, you do not need to approve the procedure, just the policy.
I make a motion to adopt the revision to policy 5415, other types of leave.
I second that motion.
Moved and seconded. Any other discussion on that? Nope. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes on policy 5415. So then we have a first reading of a policy, and I believe Principal Jackie Johnson is going to present this one, the Title I. Yes. Welcome back.
This policy, for the first time, it just has a couple of commas that are erased. Yeah, Kelly's going, whoa, yeah, we came a long way. They're probably kicking each other saying, don't talk, we can get out of here. No, the important thing is that we meet every year, and we met on April 29th by Google, and that we review the policy and say, does the policy still meet the needs? I've compared the policy with the new policies that are recommended. Ours is much shorter and covers all the highlights, and so we're good.
We
But
just have
then-
semicolons everywhere added in.
Sorry, what?
Semicolons
Yes.
added in.
Yeah. But then it's supposed to be put before the board each year, and that helps demonstrate our focus to community and family engagement. Once it's approved, then all of the title schools just distribute that to all parents in those schools. Any questions?
No. Very straightforward changes.
Yeah.
Very minimal changes
Yes.
this year. Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so that's a first reading. There's no motion associated with that. And what we have next is a COVID update from the superintendent.
Yeah, as I do every meeting, let you know what's going in our district. We currently do have 2 active cases. One case did not affect any other individuals, but a second case did, and so we currently do have one classroom that had to quarantine till June 1st. So we had a positive in a classroom, and through contact tracing, we could not separate out who had had close contact. So that's currently where we are at this time. And also letting you know, this is where we are, the data that we're still following in Bonner County, and still feel very fortunate. There was a slight little bump. As of today, it's decreased down into 8.4. So again, we continue to monitor that. So,
Yep.
And again, I'd like to just thank our nursing staff for their diligence through this and communicating with the families on contact tracing when it's needed. So it's kind of the.
Question.
Yeah.
Do you have any more information about the proposed immunization clinic? District immunization?
There have been immunization clinics in the community.
Yeah.
I believe there was one at the Family Health Center last Saturday. So they are around there. No more information at this time on the mobile lab, but I think that's what
actually
you're.
What we talking about? See if there's one available that was actually come to one of our facilities on a Saturday.
On a Saturday, yeah, and I can reach
No
out
info on that
to
yet.
that, but
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
we don't have that arranged at this time.
So with that, I will move us into announcements, and I don't know if any of the administrators here have any. I'm going to assume TJ and Jackie have made their announcements for their school. And Casey?
Really, we're just almost done with ISATs, so that's pretty exciting. So that's really it. I mean, we're just keeping the lid on right now.
Yeah.
It's getting exciting.
Yes, yes.
Wild.
You should stop by the Homeschool Academy and check out how we decorated our planter boxes in our garden. It's really festive.
Oh, great. Good to know, good to know. Andra, any?
Had a great administrators meeting on Monday, working through master schedule and kind of looking at fall and just excited about planning for a longer day for students. So again, thank you very much for your support.
Yep. Gary, you are the only board member who attended the ISBA meeting.
I did attend, the ISBA spring leadership meeting in Coeur d'Alene
And
a
we
couple of
appreciate
weeks
you
ago.
doing that. Yep.
They covered, some procedural things and, the legislative session. I really don't have anything to report.
Well, we appreciate you going and representing us.
I get more from Lisa.
There's some
Yeah.
procedural things that, I'll discuss with you.
Take up
But,
with Kelly too.
And
Yeah.
Kelly, but, it was, we had a very detailed discussion of the legislative
Yeah.
session, more political than fiscal, and what possible repercussions that could be,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you going, and with that, Superintendent Albertson has some announcements.
Yeah, just a few.
I wasn't going to cut you off.
I will be coming to you. We're working really hard with James Taylor in the Transportation Department on bus schedules for next year, start times, end times of schools. So in a future meeting, I will give a full report for the board to be looking at our plans for next year.
Okay.
So it's still in the process. And some shout outs to our activities. They just got back from spring state events at Clark Fork High School. Congratulations to the track, tennis, and golf athletes. I believe in golf we had medalists.
Yeah.
And in tennis they did as well. And Sandpoint High School, track, baseball, tennis, and golf. The Sandpoint girls golf team were the state champions, first
Yes,
state
they were.
championship in school history. And, yeah, so accolades to them.
Yeah.
And the boys track team got third at state and competed very well. So that's a conclusion of the spring sports season.
Great, thank you.
New record in the long jump.
Long jump and a
I
state
heard
champion.
baseball was right there too. They almost beat BK.
They did. Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
It's cool.
Well, thank you. And with that, meeting adjourned.
There you go.
I'm looking around the room. Am I?
Some quality gal looking down.